guys, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be taking a look at a game from the 2024 the 45th FIDE Chess Olympiad. So this game was played in round number 2, played by Richard Rapport against Jorge Cori. Now this game isn't that long, it's only 30 moves, so they haven't even reached the second time control yet, but this game does show us some opening ideas and it's pretty interesting. So let's take a look at how this game went. So white is Richard Rapport, a Super Grandmaster who is rated 2700 against 2600 Jorge Cori. And let's start with this game. E4, C5, the Sicilian defense, knight to F3, D6, D4, takes. And now here, Richard took with the queen. Now, of course, this is not the best option. The line that we all know is to take with the knight, and this will probably transfer into the Nildorf or like the dragon and many other lines. But taking with the queen is not the best move, and why is that? Because now it gives black the idea to go knight to c6, gaining a tempo immediately in the opening. And as we know that you don't really want to develop your queen too early in the opening because it might get kicked by your opponent's pieces all over the board and losing your development time. But of course, I guess this is just Richard's preparation, so let's see how he did. Queen to e3, knight to f6, knight c3, g6, and now h3. h3 is a very useful move here, stopping black from going knight to g4 to kick this queen or bishop g4. So in the game h3, bishop g7, bishop c4, both sides are just developing. Short castle, and now a6. So a6 is, so black is having some b5 ideas basically, and to develop this way, which is very common in the Sicilian defense, especially in the Nildorf. So in the game, Richard played a4 to stop black from going b5, which is very reasonable. And here in the game, bishop d7 was played. Of course, black can also still follow his idea and go b6 instead of going b5 and still develop with bishop b7. But in the game, black chose to play bishop d7 to develop his bishop, which is also okay. Rook d1, rook c8, now queen to e1. So now things are getting a bit interesting here. Queen e1, what is this move? What is the idea of this move? Actually, this move, the main usage of this move is to open up the diagonal for the bishop to develop. And why does white go queen e3 here? So you might say, okay, if white is retreating the queen back and he knows that he is blocking the bishop, then why should white go to e3 here instead of, just going back to d1? But if you go back to d1, then you're simply just losing a full tempo here. If you go queen to e3 here, as played in the game, probably you'll have b3, bishop b2 development ideas in the future. So you're still, preserving some of these kinds of ideas on the queen side. So that is the main idea here. Of course, you can also go queen e2 here, opening up this diagonal for the bishop, and also, defending this bishop on c4. So queen e2 is slightly better than queen e1, but queen e1 is okay. Queen a5 was played, and now rook a3. Now this is a very interesting move because first of all, we know that queen to a5 the use of this move is to put pressure on the c3 knight as well as the c4 bishop indirectly, because now black is threatening to go knight e5 on the next move, so opening up this file for the rook to attack on the bishop. And once the bishop retreats back to b3, let's say, now the rook is pointing directly at this knight as well as the queen, and white will be in slight trouble here because black in the future can also slide away with this knight, to open up this diagonal for this bishop, and this bishop can also put pressure on the c3 knight. I guess all of these arrows that I've drawn are a bit messy, but I think you guys know what I mean. So that is why Richard played rook to a3, supporting the c3 knight. Knight e5 was played in the game, and after knight takes c5, queen takes c5, bishop a2 back, bishop e6, trying to trade off the bishops, but Richard says, no, I'm not going to trade, because he knows that once white takes on e6, then this position will be better for black, because black can take with the f pawn, not to take with the queen, because after taking with the queen, you somehow lose the tempo, because first of all, you go here, and then you go here. Oops. Then you go queen to e5 and you take to e6. So somehow that is a bit slow. And f takes e6 is the best option here, opening up this file for the rook. And you might say, okay, this is a double pawn here. So wouldn't that be two weaknesses later on in the game? But actually no, because now white doesn't have the light square bishop on the board anymore, which means that there are not enough pieces to put pressure on this e6 pawn. Because as we know, like in many openings, for example, like the dragon, the Nile dwarf, and in many other lines, there are situations where black just simply takes on e6 with the pawn to open up this file for the rook and gain control of the d5 square. So it is actually a very useful idea, and especially when white doesn't have the light square bishop anymore, black can take with the f pawn. So, I mean, if white has the light square bishop, which usually doesn't happen because most of the times both sides made exchanges, most of the times black will trade the light square bishop on e6, so at that time both of the bishops are gone. So yeah, in the game, f4 was played, not trading the bishops and going for f4. And after queen to c5 check, bishop e3, attacking the queen, now queen back to c6. Probably queen back to a5 is slightly better than queen to c6. Also, you can go back to c7 as well. But in the game, queen to c6 was played. And e5. Now, Richard is going a bit aggressive, especially so he is trying to create counterplay in the center. And let's see how he increased his advantage. D takes c5 was played, f takes c5, and now knight to d7. Now probably knight h5 will be a better option here. First of all, opening up this diagonal for the bishop to attack the e5 pawn. Second of all, looking at these dark squares, we can see that these, like the dark squares on the king side for white, is slightly a bit weak. Like, even though white has the dark square bishop, but it can only control one of the squares. And in the future, maybe black will have the idea to go to, black will have the opportunity to jump the knight to g3 in the future. But in the game, knight d7 was played, and knight d7 is a slight mistake here, I think. Knight to d5, yes. Why is it a mistake? Because black didn't saw this knight d5 idea by white, which is why also queen to c6 is not a good move, because now after bishop takes d5 as played in the game, bishop takes d5, now white is attacking the queen. And you can see that, you can imagine that. If black's queen were on a5, for example, or on a5. Now let's say, first of all, white cannot even go e5 because black will just, take and simply be up a pawn. Second of all, even if white has knight d5 ideas in the future, black can always trade the queens off, and it will be safer for black. So queen c6 was an inaccurate move. And after all of these moves, bishop d5, attacking the queen, queen c2, even though black is picking up some pawns, but of course now white can now open up the center with e6. Remember, don't take on b7. It is okay, I guess, but e6 will be much better than bishop b7 because that is much faster. Bishop b7, I guess black will go rook b8 in this situation. And of course, you cannot take on d7 because after queen b2, queen c1, there's rook b7 winning back the piece. And probably this position will be slightly better for black because black is up a pawn. And white here can only take the queen, and after takes take, it is white who will be trying to hold the draw here. So in the game, e6 was played, going for black's king immediately instead of picking up the juicers. Knight e5, rook d2 attacking the queen, queen c1, e takes f7, king to h8. Now, of course, black cannot take on f7 because if he takes with the knight, there's bishop takes f7. And now if rook takes f7, there's rook d8, a very easy tactic. And if you take with the king, it doesn't make sense at all, actually, because there's rook f2, winning the queen. Oops, winning the queen. Yep. And yeah. So king h8 was played in the game. But now, after rook d1, queen takes b2, white already has a slight advantage. If black had played queen c2 instead, just repeating this position, then probably white is only having a small advantage here. You can take a look at the eval bar and see that white is not winning yet, only a small edge. But in the game, queen takes b2 was played, and you can see that black is being distracted by all of these pawns. So while black is busy taking all these pawns, white is already launching a deadly attack on the king side. Queen b2, rook b3 first of all, kicking this queen, and you can see that this queen is just moving this queen is making black wasting a lot of moves. Queen c2, rook b7, taking back a pawn, and e7 pawn is also on loose. And after rook d8, rook takes c7, now queen takes a4 is another mistake. So you can see that in this game, black is wasting a lot of moves taking these kinds of useless pawns. What he should have played was actually to take on f7, because first of all, you should know that white cannot take with the bishop, because now black will be winning with rook takes d1, winning the queen. So white will take with the rook, for example, and after knight takes f7, white cannot take on f7 again because of rook to d1. So probably this position, white will go rook c1, and probably after queen f5, I don't know, let's say bishop to f3. White has the bishop pair, and both sides have 3 pawns on the board. This should be a draw. So in the game, queen takes a4 was played, bishop b6 now. Black is just he thought that he is winning a lot of pawns, but he is just overlooking white's attack. After bishop b6, white is already winning. And after bishop, rook d6, bishop c5, here black resigned. Because first of all, if the rook goes to, I don't know, back, then there's rook takes e5. The bishop also threatens the rook on f8. At the same time, black's king is in a lot of trouble. So this game teaches us that sometimes you should not eat those pawns that are useless, because it might use a lot of your own moves, and instead you should have used these moves to maneuver your pieces to launch an attack on your opponent's king. So some of these pawns are useless pawns, or some of these pawns may be poisonous pawns. What are poisonous pawns? Poisonous pawns are pawns, if you want to take them, they're poison to you, because once you take them, you might get trapped, the piece might get trapped, or white will be winning, not white, but the side who is sacrificing that pawn might have an attack, or a bigger trade-off. So yeah, I think you guys so I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and if you like it, please comment down below to tell me. Alright, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye!